Hi, I'm Katy Jean, and my guest today is one of the most recognizable Canadians. The best thing to come out of PEI since Anne of Green Gables, I have Mr. Jonathan Torrens.
Wow.
Hello!
I don't know if I live up to any of that.
You have the good hair for it.
Do you know what? I got out of the shower and was loading stuff in the truck, and it's a windstorm because there's a rainstorm on the way. And so that's how this happened.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you are from Prince Edward Island.
I am just outside of Charlottetown, a place called Sherwood, which is now part of the greater Charlottetown area. Idyllic place to grow up.
Nice. How old were you when you moved to Nova Scotia?
We moved in 1980 something, 82 or 83. It was the year the Parade of Sail was in Halifax. I remember that. And we moved because my grandmother lived in New Glasgow and we had relatives there as well. And it was easier in those days before the fixed link existed to be on the mainland in order to get back and forth to visit relatives.
Nice. So you moved to Halifax and eventually you get inspired to go into the glamour of film. How old were you when you decided you were going to try to get on television and film?
Well, it was less of a concrete decision and more of just accidentally kind of stumbled onto a moving sidewalk. Street Sense was a new show that was shooting in Halifax. It was based on a British show called Pocket Money. And they were holding auditions in Halifax. I had just done a play at St. Patrick's High School, and the executive producer, John Nowlin, came to the play. And the next day, of course, it was before cell phones and things, there was a message at the front desk from John Nowlin at CBC wondering if I would be interested in auditioning. So I was in grade 10 or 11 and started working on the show. The first piece that I did was about fast food. I ate nothing but fast food for 5 days. I did a report on it, which was kind of inconclusive because that was already kind of my diet at the time. I was working at McDonald's on Quimble Road, and it's not like there was a noticeable difference. But that was it.
Wow, what was it like? What was it like to work at that McDonald's? Because I think that looks like a nightmare.
It was super fun. I first of all, you got a free meal every shift you worked, which is the kind of currency that teenagers are into. Second of all, the people that worked there really had a lot of fun together. Like I made really good friends and we laughed a lot and we worked hard and I took pride in my work. I could pick up extra shifts. I could sneak away from school and work a 3-hour shift over lunch if I wanted to. I did some overnight shifts, which was really fun. But it was also the place where people went after the dance. Dances at St. Pat's and QE. So tried not to work those shifts because my worlds would collide. But I loved it.
You were an undercover McDonald's worker. I guess I compare it to my experience at Tim Hortons, which was a nightmare, but that sounds a lot better.
Which Tim Hortons did you work at?
I worked at the Five Corners, Portland Street, Tim Hortons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, busy spot.
Crown jewel of the Tim Hortons landscape.
I would pretend that the Matt Mays song was about me, the Queen of Portland Street.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, though. Is that a slide behind you?
It is. Yeah, those are Slayers, slide stairs, which was such a good idea on paper. And in practice, it's kind of a laundry chute. And I've told this story before. It was supposed to be a leisurely spiral staircase, but the building inspector said you have to be able to get people up and down in the event of injury. So your primary Slayer case has to be big enough for a stretcher. And I was like, well, if someone was hurt, we just fire them on the slide. Alas, now it's like a luge run. Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm entirely jealous of your Slayers.
You have to wear oven mitts the first time you go down because despite what people say beforehand, they panic brace halfway down and the wood velocity. It also depends on the season. If it's dry and you're wearing silk pajama bottoms, you might go through the wall at the other end. But if there's more moisture in the air and if you're wearing burlap shorts, like that would be faster than sandpaper trousers. It's quite a science.
No rubber pants. You wouldn't get any speed that way.
PVC pants? Yeah, exactly.
So, it's kind of funny with Street Sense. I had this, I was kind of young when Street Sense came over. I have an older brother. But it made me really think that, like, it was local programming because I, at the time, was young and kind of watching Theodore Tugboat. And then Street Sense would come on and you would see, Halifax sometimes. And sometimes you went out. That I really thought, like, Street Sense was, like, just made for Nova Scotians. And I had no idea that, like, it was bigger. And then you went on to Jonavision. And I was just like, oh my God, if you're from Halifax, you can actually get a job in Toronto. And I didn't know that in my youth, that people from Halifax can actually get film jobs in Toronto. What was that like?
Crazy. It was crazy. And it's, to your initial question, it's never been a plan. I've never had this chess board sequence of events in my mind. I've always just grabbed the opportunities that have come my way. I always say I'm not the best at anything. I do a little bit of a bunch of different things, and that has allowed me to work a lot. The Swiss Army knife approach, I call it. I work really hard, but like I say, I'm not the best at anything. After Street Sense, called Ryerson and said, I want to come and study radio and television arts. And the woman that I spoke to there said, you're working in TV. Just keep working, show up early, stay late, ask questions, take criticism, like all the good stuff. So that's what I chose to do. And I didn't know I could get a job in Toronto either. So it was pretty crazy. Jonavision was born out of a network special I did called AIDS Care, which was a comedy show for teenagers about the myths surrounding AIDS, which sounds bananas to say it out loud, but it was, have been most of the things that I've done, speaking to kids in terms they understand. So infotainment, Street Sense was about money. That's a boring topic. So how can you make it not boring? You do a Friends parody. Jonavision was a talk show for kids, but sometimes it was a battle of the bands and sometimes it was a sketch show. And you tuned in because hopefully you didn't ever know what it was going to be. And that was part of its charm. Neither did the people making it, by the way. So the idea of AIDS Care being a sketch show about AIDS was like pretty risque, but it was also pretty revolutionary. It was on the first wave of kind of that infotainment stuff, making the spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down.
Yeah, well, I mean, even on like Jonavision, like some things did get kind of risky at times. I think you did like an abortion episode, and like, I don't know. CBC seems to be fairly on board with that stuff with Degrassi and everything. And you also have had involvement with Degrassi, which was amazing. You pretty much spawned the next generation of Degrassi.
I don't know if it's true. A word on some of the topics that we did. We discovered pretty quickly with broad topics like racism or abortion. We had enough time to open the can of worms, but not enough time to put all the worms back. So those were kind of experiments and well-intended, if a little misguided in the early going. We thought we wanted to do kind of more serious, earnest episodes, but ultimately concluded, is it more irresponsible to sort of introduce a topic and not have enough time to resolve it or arm people with the tools they need to discuss it or break it down? So we shied away from those heavier topics. But the Degrassi reunion was the highest rated episode of Jonavision ever. Again, it was like before kind of early days of internet. So most of the mail that we got was snail mail, a lot of it from Manitoba for some reason. And if we did something like Sex with Sue Johansson, prime example of speaking to kids in terms they understand. She was cheeky and unexpected and surprising and could say dildo and you would gasp, but it was very effective. And when we did a show like that, we'd get a lot of letters, often from older folks or professors or people watching CBC waiting for whatever else to come on. And they were shocked that we'd be having these kind of conversations with kids. But there are kind of two camps. There are those that accept the statistics that this stuff is happening, so you better talk about it, and those that want to pretend it isn't.
Right, because you were on at like 4:00 or
Yeah.
something. Like this wasn't, 11 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. Like you were after school.
Yeah, and I know from working at CBC for years and filling in on Q and stuff like that, people because they feel ownership over CBC as taxpayers, people feel compelled to write letters in and rage and be furious with you. I remember I was guest hosting Q and someone wrote in and said, please tell that man that it's Alberta with a T, not a D, Alberta. So all I could think was imagine having that kind of time in your life where you're like, you know what I'm going to do today is pen a letter to a buddy from Street Sense who mispronounced Alberta. But it's also one of the things I love about CBC. People are so, or used to be, had such a vested interest in the shows and the personalities. And I remember traveling to smaller places. Charlottetown's a great example where the market share for the CBC Supper Hour News is unheard of, because those are the places where CBC really matters. It's the only place to get local news back in those times. And in Toronto, if there were 8 options for local news, in Charlottetown, there was 1 or 1.5. So I always really believed in the information railway that was CBC. If you were before the internet and you were in St. John or St. John's or the Pas, Manitoba, you had 2 ways to find out what kids were doing. 1, wait for Chickadee magazine to arrive in your mailbox once a month, or 2, watch TV. And so I was always really proud of the fact that people could see what kids in Toronto were wearing or listening to or talking about. It was kind of a little lifeline.
That's great. And I love Jonavision because I was kind of coming into age when that came on, and you never knew what you were going to get. You could get like a pretty serious talk, or you could get one of my favorite characters, Dragon the City. And
nice.
This kid on a bike just out there doing his thing. And it was just like, I think how like Robot Chicken now is just like, unexpected. Jonavision kind of did that. You didn't know if you were going to be sat down and, explain something that somebody else wasn't explaining to you, or you were going to get you performing as an entire boy band in different shots. It was consistent entertainment, and it was just so enjoyable.
Well, it's nice of you to say, and it was often the product of what was available to us. We didn't have a lot of resources, as is often the case with shows that are stripped or on every day. But if we did a few talk episodes, that would free up some money that would allow us to do some of the sketches that we really wanted to do. To bring it back to Degrassi, Stefan and Pat, who played Joey and Snake, were in Dragon the City, and we couldn't believe we could book them to be in it, and they were happy to come and super funny and super nice guys. And so the idea to do a Degrassi reunion sort of caught fire, and the first thing we did was book Wheels. He was the first one that we kind of guaranteed, but there was some friction with another cast member who said they wouldn't come if Wheels was there. So we kind of unbooked Wheels, which didn't feel great. But all things considered, having this other cast member felt like more necessary. So there was drama, but I think Linda Schuyler, who created Degrassi, was quite surprised at the affection that people still had for the show. So not to suggest Jonavision was the reason they ended up doing The Next Generation, but I think that was certainly evidence to her that there was an appetite for this show. Do you know my favorite Canadian showbiz tidbit about Degrassi?
What?
Do you know about Linda Schuyler and Aaron Spelling?
Yes.
You know that story?
No, I know who they are. I don't know the story, though.
You're like, yeah, I know the story. So Aaron Spelling calls Linda Schuyler and says, I love that show you do with the kids going through the real issues. And Linda says, yeah, it's real looking kids going through real issues. And he was like, yeah, the real issues is really cool with high school kids. And she was like, yeah, they're all real looking. Anyway, she flew down to take a meeting with him, and they couldn't kind of come to terms on what the show should look like. So Aaron did his own 90210.
Wow.
Which would not exist if it wasn't for the zit-faced Canadian real looking kids. So Aaron
Uh,
Spelling was like, yeah, the real looking part, I don't really dig that, but the issues, that's cool.
the issues are good, but make them 30 years old and good looking and make them play teenagers.
Yeah. And hire a Canadian as the lead.
Yes, yes. Oh, the Canadians are everywhere. But you actually got to play a part on Degrassi in The Next Generation.
I did. The original cast member who played Shane. I think if you recall, you probably do better than I do. At the end of the original one, he took some illegal substances and jumped off a bridge and had an unspecified sort of head injury. And I think there was a hope that he would come back in The Next Generation. So they wrote this 2-part episode and it didn't work out for whatever reason. So they were stuck with 2 scripts and needed a blonde actor to play Shane. So it was directed by legendary Canadian director Bruce McDonald, who's just a doll.
Nice.
And it was the most dramatic turn I have done before or since. And it's interesting with a comedy background, you tend to default to what would be really funny or the sketch version. So to actually play something that has to be grounded in truth and sort of plausible is kind of scary. Because at least in comedy, you can hide behind a wig or a pair of glasses or some false teeth or something. This was like, okay, I'm acting now. This was man.
I actually have to be directed, and that sounds terrifying. I once got a role because they were looking for underweight, gaunt looking people. So
I did not get that call.
No, you didn't. I don't know why. But so I get the
my kid has started acting recently. She's 13 and she was in a couple of episodes of From. I've worked with her a couple of times, and this is a conversation that we have over and over again. There are so many circumstances that are out of your control. You might look not enough like the person they've cast as your sibling. You might look too much like the person they cast as your brother's girlfriend. There are so many reasons. They might owe a favor to someone and cast them in this. There are so many reasons why you won't get it, which is disappointing, but it's also really freeing. Because I can't count the number of times someone has come in and blown me away and I've thought they're not right for this, but I'm going to write something for them because I love them so much.
Yeah, film's tough like that. You can't take it personally because it might be you have green eyes and they wanted someone with brown, and it's not written down anywhere, but the person that's actually going to look at you, it's just they didn't want their character to have green eyes.
You're a traveling salesperson and the product you're selling is yourself. And when people say, I don't want to buy that product, how do you not take that personally? But it's just bigger than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Soul crushing, but humbling at least. I've tried to take it in stride. Luckily I'm doing this now, so I don't have auditions anymore where I have to put my heart and soul into things and then never get an email.
Well, it's interesting living in the States as a Canadian because we're self-deprecating by nature and Americans don't tend to have that gene. So I live down there, apologize during auditions, sorry, stinking up the room. It's almost over. Bear with me. So sorry about this. And I was talking about this the other day at Central Kings Rural High School. It was Wellness Day and I was giving a speech. And I was talking about how we sometimes think arrogance and self-confidence are synonymous. But in fact, self-confidence is just being confident in yourself. And I had an American friend who was finally like, when someone gives you a compliment, just take it. Just take it and say thank you. Stop making it weird. But our instinct here when someone gives you a compliment is to say oh, well, I remember when I moved down there, people would say, I saw your reel. It's funny. And I would say, oh, well, if you've been working for 15 years and you can't cobble together 2 minutes, you're in the wrong game. Am I right? Just making it weird. So I've to learn, even when we started this and you said, your hair looks nice. My instinct is to say oh, it's a wig or I found it or instead of just saying thank you. It's okay to say thank you.
It's something we struggle with. I just I know I'm terrible at taking compliments. I just like shut down. I'm like, why are you saying nice things to me? I don't say nice things to me. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because I never say nice things to me. That it's really odd when other people do. But so when you're working on Street Sense, you kind of things kind of went full circle for you. That's where you met Clattenburg.
Yeah, Mike Clattenburg was this comedic unicorn who had a show on Cable 10, and I was a huge fan of it, and it was called That Damn Cable Show. And probably if it came out now, it would still be 20 years ahead of its time. But Mike was such a student of the craft, and when he worked at Halifax Cable, as it was known in those days, he'd ask to take a camera home for the weekend and make a documentary about his cat. And the skills were being developed in this arena. And when we met, we were kind of like the chocolate and the peanut butter, but we were both also kind of peanut butter. And I was just fascinated by him and a little starstruck by him. And he had the most unique comedic voice. His dad, Ken, used to play drums with Dutchy Mason,
Nice.
which is so Nova Scotian, like so dark. It's the best. And Mike went to King's Tech in the Valley to study film and television. And when he'd come back, he'd encounter people all over Halifax all summer who would say, how's it going driving a truck for Ben's? Mike would say, what? His dad would tell anyone he bumped into who said, what's Mike up to? Oh, he's driving a truck for Ben's Bakery in the Valley, which simply wasn't true. And just the idea of the comedic confidence it takes to be there for the setup, but not the payoff. And it doesn't matter because you're just planting all these seeds all over town that are going to pay off for months. And you don't even get to be there to see it is so funny to me. And Mike has comedic ability in that way that is so unique and strange. It's the same thing that when Trailer Park started, do a scene with Ricky and Randy and they're fighting and it's really funny and the words are good. And then Mike would say, let's do it again. But Randy has a bag of sour cream and onion chips and Ricky's trying to get them from him. Same scene, just makes it ludicrous.
Right.
And also just aesthetically slow motion shots of 8-year-old girls on banana seated bicycles and kittens on a garbage pile to kind of sand down the rough edges of some of the content. That's vintage Clattenburg too, and old cars.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to like the Insular, I thought it was local programming. I didn't know for an embarrassing amount of time that Trailer Park Boys existed outside of Nova Scotia, like because it's so specifically Nova Scotia and like specifically Dartmouth. I remember I was working at a portrait studio and I needed tech support from like Missouri, and they're like, oh, you're in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Do you know the Trailer Park Boys? And I was working at Penhorn Mall where the like part of the pilot was filmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually like I can see where the pilot, and they like freaked out. I was like, how do you know who the Trailer Park Boys are? Like, what is going on? That blew up.
And continues to. That's the crazy thing. It's like the cockroach of Canadian comedy. It landed with a thud when it came out. People didn't know what it was. It was cops from a criminal's point of view. When it aired in the States, it was on BBC America and it was bleeped. Imagine trying to figure out what an episode of Trailer Park was about if it was bleeped. People in the States at first thought it was a documentary, didn't really know it was a mockumentary. But in Canada, bands and sports teams, athletes, people started sharing the DVDs back and forth. And it sort of rose from the ashes and started to get traction. And I always say, I assumed it was people from Nova Scotia, like working in Fort Mac and stuff. It doesn't make sense that someone from Saskatchewan finds it funny.
It doesn't.
No, because
at all.
It's on in every territory in the world. And what makes even less sense to me is that someone in Norway or Germany or Finland would find it funny. So I met a guy from... I think it was Armenia recently, and he took VHS tapes of Trailer Park Boys into his school to learn English. And his teacher would help him in class learn English from, which is a very bastardized form of English, as you might expect. But I said, like, why does the comedy resonate for you? It seems to us so local. And he said, well, we have gypsies. So it's kind of the same thing. Like we have vagabonds and people that don't come from much. I guess those are the themes that are universal.
Yeah, I guess. It is like, it's so distinctly Nova Scotian accents and like references and, slang. God bless who's learning English off of the Trailer Park Boys, because that's... Okay. I hope they travel. I hope they go to the States and try to speak in the language.
Yeah.
But after Trailer Park Boys, like, you've kept going. You did Mr. D. Actually, I've only actually met you in real life once, and I hope you don't remember it. I was in the pilot of Mr. D, and we were doing like a hallway scene. And one of the ADs, assistant director, realized I was in the last shot, and he kind of just like shoved me into a classroom. And so I went in and I was just waiting, and I turned around and you're like in a dark corner. And I was just like, holy crap, that's Jonathan Torrens. And I was like, I just absolutely froze. I don't think I said anything to you. I don't think we said anything to each other. And you are way taller than I thought you were. How tall are you?
5'11".
I don't know why, but you were way taller than I thought, and I was just like standing there like, oh my God, what do I say? And all I could hear in my head was cocoon, cocoon, cocoon.
Oh, from the moths.
Yes. But anyway, I left as quickly as I could.
This is kind of a surprising thing. I'm more shy than people would probably expect. I'm not, strangely, not super comfortable in the spotlight, or I don't want to be the center of attention in a room. So I do kind of lurk is the wrong word, but I do kind of walk with my head down and try not to. I'm so conscious, and I'm sure it's coming from this part of the world. Nobody likes someone getting above their raisin. So right. I always feel like when you do this for a living, you start from a bit of a deficit and people assume you're a bit of a jerk. So to just get to, it's not bad, requires some energy or ability to fly under the radar. But to get to, who I met who's kind of nice, requires more energy.
Yes.
So the thing that has changed in my career is, and I think one of the reasons I've been able to have a career is because I leave things before they're over. So I'm kind of always looking for the next vine. Even though I'm a freelancer, I have a fear of commitment, and I don't want to overstay my welcome, and I want to leave before the audience does, and all those things. But one thing that has changed in the suddenly 30 years I've been doing this is the interaction used to be, hey, you're Buddy from Street Sense. Yeah. My name's Donnie. Hi, Donnie. How are you? I'm great. Where are you from, Donnie? Yarmouth. In fact, my cousin went to Camp Getty with you in Cape Breton. No way. What's your cousin's name? Melissa. I remember her. Kind of a nice exchange. Now the entire exchange is, you're Buddy. No eye contact, no handshake, no nice to meet you too. It's just for the gram, as people say. And don't get me wrong, this is a lovely problem to have. It's just an observation about how the exchange is different now.
Yeah, no, I have noticed that. And I think one of the reasons why, celebrities kind of like Nova Scotia is, first off, we won't actually think it's you. We'll think it's somebody that looks a lot like you. Or we tend to not bother anyone. I remember I was in Halifax one day, and I came around a corner, and I bumped into Bobby Lee, and we just kind of both froze again. And I was just like, don't do it. Just keep on going with your day. I know that's him. But yeah, but some people are really in your face, and they don't really want to meet you. They want other people to know that they met you.
Exactly. And it's such a weird moment because everyone needs photographic proof that it happened. And maybe it's an elevator, and maybe it's 1 a.m, and maybe the camera's low angle and the lighting conditions are terrible. And you're just kind of opening yourself up to, I guess this picture's getting shared, and all the comments that come with it, I just have to choose to take or not read or not engage. Luckily, my happiness has nothing to do with whether someone likes or appreciates picture of me on the internet.
Nice. Well, I mean, you are a very recognizable, like, if we think it's actually you and not someone that just looks like you. Because there is a lot of like, hey, you're the guy from Street Sense. Hey, you're the guy from John Division. Hey, you're J-Rock. Hey, you're this guy. Like, you've played a lot of roles and successfully. You know, you've been a lot of people in a good way. It's not, you know, you're not just, you know, kind of the movies That Guy, where it's like, oh, that background guy, I recognize him from Seinfeld and Law and Order and Boston Public. You're actually like playing characters consistently, and to get that amount of work from someone based in Halifax is even more impressive. So I guess my final question for you is, why have you stayed in Nova Scotia? Why aren't you in Toronto, Vancouver? Why have you decided to make your life here?
Well, it's a tale as old as time. It took going away. I never lived in Toronto. I always say I stayed in Toronto because the second I was finished, I had a house back here and I always came back to Nova Scotia. But I moved to LA. I was there for 7 years, made friends for life, enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but it just wasn't home. And I always say I went there to make it without really knowing what my it was. It was never stardom. It was never network primetime cop show. For a fleeting nanosecond, it was probably the Tonight Show, but I got to a point where there was no job that would be better than living where I'm from. And I realized that my it is balance, and I can achieve that here. My wife and I walk the dogs. I pick up the girls at school. I write some jokes. The days that my mind is tired and my hands are sore and my body's tired when I'm going to bed, those are the best days. And I can do all that here.
That's incredible. Well, we're very happy to have you here in Nova Scotia, and we're happy for everything you have given us. Many laughs, except Degrassi, very serious. And we really appreciate you here, and I really appreciate you speaking with me today.
I'm going to give you a compliment before we go, and I want to watch you. You're an excellent interviewer.
Don't say that.
Just say thank you.
Thank you.
And then don't say anything else. That's the trick. There's no but. You don't have to fill the space or backpedal or walk it back. Thank you.
I received the compliment. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and taking your time to speak with me. Have an excellent day and watch the rain come in.
I will. I can't wait.
All right. Thank you.